Alright, so let's begin with the basics of web development. Web development is at the core of everything we interact with online. From simple static websites to complex web applications, the web is built on a foundation of key technologies that allow developers to create engaging, interactive experiences for users around the world. Understanding the basics of web development is crucial for anyone looking to build their own websites or web apps, whether it's for personal use, business, or as part of a larger project. In this section, we will explore the essential building blocks of web development. And by the end of this subtopic, you'll have a clear understanding of what makes a website work, the technologies involved, and how they fit together. Now let's quickly understand what is web development. In simple terms, web development is the process of creating websites and web applications that are accessible over the internet. It involves designing, building, and maintaining websites using a combination of programming languages, frameworks, and tools. Now you see, web development can be divided into three main areas: front-end web development, back-end web development, and full-stack web development. Now, to keep things easy to understand, we will first talk about front-end and back-end. Now let's understand the front-end web development. This is the part of web development that deals with everything the user interacts with directly. This includes the design, layout, and the interactive elements of the website. The front end is built using languages like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now let's understand back-end web development. The back end is the server side of the web, where the logic, database interactions, and server operations happen. It's responsible for processing the request from the front end, managing data, and serving up the content users see. Now, the common backend technologies include Node.js, Python, Ruby, and databases like MySQL or MongoDB. Now in this course, we'll start with the basics of front-end development, focusing on creating visually appealing and functional websites. And then, as we progress, we will introduce back-end development to build more dynamic and interactive web applications. Now let's understand how websites work. To understand web development, it's important to know how websites work behind the scenes. Now, when you visit a website, you see several processes happen to bring that site to your screen. First and foremost, when you use the browser. So when you open your web browser, for example Chrome, Firefox, or Safari, and type in a URL, say for example example.com, so this is essentially a request for a web page. So basically, the browser sends a request to the server where the website is hosted. The server then processes this request and sends back the files that make up the website. So usually HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files. Then comes how the rendering of the page takes place. So the browser receives these files and renders them on your screen. Basically, it interprets the HTML to build the structure of the page, applies the CSS to style it, and execute JavaScript to add interactivity. Now you may think this will take a lot of time, but this process happens in a fraction of a second every time you visit a website. The goal of web development is to ensure that this process happens smoothly, resulting in a fast, functional, and visually appealing experience for the user. Now let's understand the key technologies in web development. Now let's break down the three core technologies that form the foundation of web development: the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. These technologies work together to create the structure, style, and functionality of a website. Now let's start with HTML, Hypertext Markup Language.
What it is.
HTML is the standard language used to create the structure of a web page. It defines the elements of the page, such as headings, paragraphs, images, links, and more. Now you see, HTML is the backbone of any website, providing the basic framework that everything else is built upon.
How it works.
HTML uses tags to define different elements on a page. For example, the tag h1 is used for main headings, the tag p is used for paragraphs, and the tag a is used for links. Now these tags are combined to create the content and layout of the website. Now let's take an example. A simple HTML snippet for a web page might look like this on your screen. Also, don't worry, we will go through in-depth explanations for each when required. For now, please understand and brush up on the basic concepts. Alright, now let's move ahead. Now let's understand CSS, that is Cascading Style Sheets.
What it is.
So CSS is the language used to style and format the appearance of a website. While HTML provides the structure, CSS is responsible for making the website look visually appealing by controlling the layout, colors, fonts, and much more.
How it works.
So CSS works by applying styles to HTML elements. Now on your screen you can see on your left hand side, on the left image, is a website or a web page when CSS is applied, and on your right side you can see the same web page without a CSS. So that's why CSS works by applying styles to HTML elements, and it's like it makes the website looks visually very appealing. Now you can define these styles either in a separate CSS file or directly within the HTML file using tags. Now CSS allows you to control the look of your website consistently across all pages. Now here's the basic CSS snippet that styles the HTML example that we learned previously. So basically, this CSS code will change the background color of the page, set the font for all text, and apply specific colors to the headings, paragraphs, and links. Now let's understand JavaScript.
What it is.
So JavaScript is a programming language that allows you to add interactivity and dynamic content to your website. While HTML and CSS are used for structure and style, JavaScript enables features like animations, form validations, interactive maps, and real-time updates.
How it works.
So JavaScript is executed in the user's browser, making it ideal for client-side interactions. So you can use JavaScript to respond to user actions like clicking a button, manipulate the HTML content of the page, or communicate with servers to fetch new data without reloading the page. Here's a simple JavaScript snippet that changes the text of an HTML element when a button is clicked. So in this example, when the user clicks the button, the text inside the paragraph changes dynamically without needing to reload the page. Now let's understand front-end versus back-end development. As you know, to build a complete web application, you need to understand the differences between front-end and back-end development. Both play crucial roles in creating functional and engaging websites, but they focus on different parts of the process. Now let's first understand the front-end development. Number 1, focus. The front end is everything the user interacts with directly. This includes the layout, design, and interactive elements of the website. Now then comes the technologies. Front-end developers primarily use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript along with front-end frameworks like React, Angular, Vue.js to build complex interfaces. And number 3 is responsibility. Front-end developers ensure that the website is visually appealing, responsive, works on all devices, and user-friendly. Now let's understand back-end development. Again, we'll start with focus. The back end is the server side of the website where the logic, database interactions, and server operations occur. It's responsible for processing user requests, managing data, and serving content to the front end. Then let's talk about the technologies. Back-end developers work with server-side languages like Node.js, Python, Ruby, and databases like MySQL, MongoDB, or PostgreSQL. Then let's talk about responsibility. Back-end developers ensure that the website functions smoothly, process data correctly, and handle user interactions securely. Now in this course, we'll start with front-end development to build the visual aspects of your website. And then as we progress, we will introduce back-end concepts to add dynamic features like user authentication, databases, and server-side processing. Now let's understand the development workflow. So web development follows a structured workflow that guides you through the process of creating a website from start to finish. Now here's an overview of the typical workflow. Number 1, planning. Now before writing any code, you need to plan your website. So this involves identifying the purpose of the site, the target audience, and the features it will include. You'll also sketch out the layout and design. Then comes design. Next, you'll focus on designing the visual elements of the website. This might involve creating mockups in design tools like Figma or Adobe XD. In this course, we'll keep things simple and focus on translating our ideas directly into code. Then comes the development. This is where you write the code that brings your website to life. You'll start with the structure, that is the HTML, then add styling, CSS, and finally implement any interactivity using JavaScript. Now after completing all the 3 steps, then comes testing. So after development, you need to test your website to ensure everything works correctly across different browsers and devices, which involves checking for bugs, broken links, and performance issues. After all these comes deployment. Once everything is working smoothly, you'll deploy your website to the internet so users can access it. In this course, we'll use free hosting platforms like GitHub Pages and Netlify to make your websites live. After all the 5 steps comes the maintenance. So after your site is live, you may need to make updates, fix bugs, or add new features. Therefore, ongoing maintenance is essential for keeping your website secure and up to date. Now by following these 6 steps, which is the workflow, you can systematically approach web development, ensuring that your projects are well planned, well executed, and user friendly. Web development is an exciting field that allows you to bring your ideas to life online. By understanding the basics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and how they work together, you are well on your way to building your first website. In this section, we have introduced you to the core technologies and processes involved in web development, laying the groundwork for everything we'll build in this course. Now next, we will dive deeper into these technologies, starting with hands-on projects that will take you from the basics to more advanced web development skills. Now get ready to start building your first website. Understanding how websites work is crucial for any aspiring web developer, as it provides the foundation for everything you'll build in the future. By the end of this subtopic, you'll have a solid grasp of the key concepts that power the web, preparing you for more advanced development topics. Now, as you may know, a website is a collection of interconnected web pages that are accessible through the internet. Now, each web page typically contains text, images, videos, and other multimedia elements that are arranged to convey information to the user. Now, website can range from simple static pages like personal blogs to complex dynamic platforms like e-commerce stores, social networks, or web applications. As its core, a website is a combination of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that work together to create the structure, style, and interactivity of the site. Now, these web pages are stored on a web server and are accessed by the users through a web browser. Now, websites serve a wide range of purposes, which includes information, where the websites like news, sites, blogs, and wikis provide information on various topics. Communication, like social media platforms and forums, allow people to connect and share content. We also have businesses like e-commerce sites, which enable businesses to sell products and services online. You can also use websites for entertainment, like video streaming sites, online games, and music platforms, which offers entertainment to users. And then comes the services, that is, software as a service. SaaS platforms provide tools and services to users directly through the web. No matter the purpose, all websites share the same basic principles of how they work, which we will explore next. Now, to understand how websites work, it's important to know the key components that make up a website. First is the web pages. So a website consists of individual web pages, which are the individual documents that make up the site. And each web page is written in HTML and styled with CSS and may include JavaScript for added functionality. Now let's have a quick look at web browser. So basically, a web browser such as Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, or Safari is the software used to access and view websites. The browser renders the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript into a visual interface that users can interact with. Now let's understand the next component, which is very important for a website to run, is web server. So in simple terms, a web server is a computer that stores the website's files, like, say for example, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, images, videos, etc., and delivers them to users when requested. Servers can be located anywhere in the world and are connected to the internet, allowing users to access the website from their own devices. Now, the next component which we will understand now is domain name. So the domain name is the human readable address of a website. It's what users type into their browser's address bar to visit the site. Domain names are linked to the server's IP address, making it easier for users to find the website. Now, the fifth component is the URL, that is Uniform Resource Locator. So a URL is the full address of a specific web page or resource on the internet. For example, https://www.example.com/about. So this is the URL for the about page of a website. The URL specifies the protocol, example HTTP or HTTPS, the domain, and the path to the specific page or resource. Now, one more important component is hosting. So basically, hosting is a service that allows your website to be accessible on the internet. When you host a website, you are essentially renting space on the server where your website's files are stored and served to visitors. Now, together, these components form the backbone of a functioning website. Now let's have a look at the process of how a website works when a user tries to visit it. Now, so far in this video lecture, we first learned about what is a website. Then second part of this video lecture was the basic components of a website. Now in the third part, we will understand how websites work. Now, the process of accessing and displaying a website is known as a request-response cycle. This cycle involves communication between the user's web browser and the web server that hosts the website. Now, here's a step-by-step breakdown of how this process works. First, when user enters a URL. So when a user types a URL into their web browser, say www.example.com, or clicks on a link, the browser sends a request to the server where the website is hosted. Now, as you can see in the screen, this request asks for the web page associated with the URL to the server. Now, after the user enters a URL, the second step is the DNS lookup. So before the request reaches the server, the browser needs to find out where the website is located. This is done through a DNS, that is domain name system lookup. Now, after the DNS lookup, the next step is when the server receives the request. So once the browser has the IP address, it sends the request to the server. The server receives the request and processes it, identifying the specific web page or resource the user is asking for. Then comes the fourth step. Server then sends the response. So after processing the request, the server sends back the files that make up the requested web page. This usually includes HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and any multimedia content like images or videos. Now, after all these processes, the next step is when the browser renders the web page. So basically, the browser receives the response from the server and begins rendering the web page. It interprets the HTML to create the structure, applies CSS for styling, and executes JavaScript to add interactivity. Then comes the final step, when the user sees the page. So once the browser has finished rendering the page, the user sees the fully loaded website on their screen. The user can interact with the website, such as clicking on links, filling out forms, or watching videos. Now, you may think this entire process will take ages, but realistically, this entire process happens in just a few seconds, thanks to the power of modern web servers and browsers. Now, always remember that not all websites work the same way. Depending on how the content is delivered, websites can be categorized into two main types: static and dynamic websites. Now let's have a quick theoretical understanding of what are static websites. So basically, static websites consist of fixed content that doesn't change unless the developer manually updates it. Now you can say each web page is a separate HTML file, and when a user visits the site, the server simply sends the HTML file to the browser. Now, when to use them? So, static websites are ideally for simple sites that don't require frequent updates or user interaction, such as personal blogs, portfolios, or informational pages. Now, let's take an example. A personal blog where each post is a separate HTML page would be considered a static website. So every time a user visits the page, they receive the same content. Now let's have a quick understanding of what are dynamic websites. So dynamic websites generate content on the fly based on user interactions, database queries, or other factors. Now instead of delivering static HTML files, the server dynamically generates the content, often using the backend languages like PHP, Python, or Node.js. Now, when to use them? So, dynamic websites are essential for more complex sites that require user interaction, real-time updates, or database-driven content, such as e-commerce stores, special networks, or web applications. So now let's take an example. An e-commerce website that displays different products based on user searches and interactions is a dynamic website. So the content is generated based on what the user is looking for, and the server interacts with the database to retrieve the relevant information. Now in this course, we'll start by building static websites to learn the basics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then, as we progress, we'll move on to dynamic websites that incorporate the backend functionality and database interactions. Now, let's understand the role of protocols in web development. Now, as you may know, websites communicate over the internet using specific protocols, which are standardized rules that define how data is transmitted between the devices. Now, the two most common protocols in web development are HTTP and HTTPS. Now, let's first talk about HTTP, that is Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Now, what is Hypertext Transfer Protocol? So basically, HTTP is the foundational protocol used for transmitting data on the web. So when you visit a website, your browser and the web server communicate using HTTP to send and receive files. And how it works? Now, HTTP is a request response protocol, meaning that the browser sends an HTTP request to the server and the server responds with the requested resources. You can say like HTML files or images. Now let's talk about HTTPS, that is Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. Now you may think, what is HTTPS? So it's just the secure version of HTTP. Basically, it encrypts the data being transferred between the browser and the server, ensuring the sensitive information such as passwords or payment details remain secure during transmission. Now this is really a good question, why it's important. So HTTPS is essential for any website that handles sensitive information such as login credentials or credit card details. It protects your data from being intercepted by malicious actors and is a key factor in gaining user trust. In modern web development, using HTTPS is considered best practice even for simple websites, as it enhances security and improves SEO, that is the search engine optimization rankings. Now the next part, content delivery networks, that is CDN. Now, to speed up the delivery of web content to users around the world, many websites use CDNs, that is the content delivery networks. Basically, a CDN is a network of servers distributed across different geographical locations. So, when a user visits a website that uses a CDN, the content is delivered from the server closest to the user, reducing the load times and improving performance. First, let's talk about content distribution. The website's content, like images, videos, and scripts, is stored on multiple servers in different locations. Second, user request. Now, when a user requests a web page, the CDN delivers the content from the server that's geographically closest to the user. And CDN also improves the performances. So, as you may understand, by reducing the distance that data needs to travel, CDNs help websites load faster and handle large amounts of traffic more efficiently. Basically, CDNs are particularly useful for websites with a global audience, as they ensure that users experience fast load times no matter where they are in the world. Now, websites may seem simple on the surface, but they rely on a complex network of components and processes to function smoothly. From the moment a user types a URL into their web browser to the content appearing on the screen, there's a lot happening behind the scenes. Now, by understanding the basics of how websites work, you are building a strong foundation for your journey into web development. Now that you know what websites are and how they function, we will dive deeper into the core technologies that make them possible. That is the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's time to build your own website. Are you ready? So let's get ready to start building your own website from scratch. Step 1. Setting up your workspace. Alright, first things first, we need a place to write our code, and for that we're gonna use Replit. Now, Replit is this amazing tool that lets you code directly in your browser. No need to download anything, so no complicated setups, just pure simple coding. Let's get you set up. Now hop on over to Replit. Just head to replit.com and sign up for the free account. Alright, I'll wait. Brilliant. Now we need to create a new project. So once you are logged in, you'll see this plus button that says create rep, in short, like Replit. So click that and then choose HTML, CSS, and JS, that is JavaScript, as the template. This setup is gonna give us everything we need to start building our website. Now, name your project something like say my portfolio, or whatever you want. Sweet. And then click create rep. Brilliant. Now you've got your workspace ready. So let's move on to actually building something cool. Now our step 2 is building the structure with HTML. Now here's the deal. As HTML is like the bones of our website, right? It's what gives your site its structure. Now just think of it like framing a house. So we are going to start by creating the structure using HTML. But hey, I know coding might seem a bit daunting at first, so we are going to let our buddy ChatGPT do the heavy lifting here. Let's get ChatGPT to generate some HTML for us. There we go, ChatGPT. Let's have our first prompt. So it will be something like generate an HTML structure for a personal portfolio website with sections for, maybe we need sections for home, we need an about, then portfolio, and let's have a contact page as well. Contact. Now hit enter. Let's see. So here we go. Here's a simple HTML structure for a personal portfolio website with sections for home, about, portfolio, and contact. There we go. Look at that. Your website now has all the sections you need. You have home, about, portfolio, and contact. It's like setting up the skeleton of your site, isn't it? You've got a header at the top with links, different sections for your content, and a footer at the bottom. Now go ahead, let's copy this code into Replit, okay, into a my portfolio project. So make sure you're in index.html and paste your code, save it, and then the right hand side you can see there's a web view tab. Click it and then refresh it. Bang on, there we go. Oh my god, that looks incredible. Brilliant. So also don't worry, we're gonna make it look pretty, much more pretty, in our next step. Okay, so it's our step 3, making it look good with CSS. So we have got the bones of our website, but let's be real right now, it looks like kind of very plain, innit? That's where we're gonna use CSS. So think of CSS as the clothes and makeup for your website. It's what makes everything look polished and professional. Now it's time for our ChatGPT. Now let's have our next prompt for CSS. So we'll type generate CSS to style a personal portfolio website with a modern, clean design, including responsive design elements. Okie dokie, hit enter. Here's a CSS file to style your personal portfolio website with a modern, clean design. The style includes responsive design elements to ensure that the site looks good on various screen sizes. Okie dokie, there we go. Now, there we go. This CSS is gonna make your website look super slick. You've got a modern design responsive layout, so it looks good on your phones, tablets, whatever device you're using, and everything styled to match a clean and professional look. Have a look at the code, and it also gives you the explanation what's the base styles, header, navigation, then you have sections, portfolio, contact, footer, responsive design, and you can also customize further if you want to. But now our next step is to go ahead and copy this CSS code, to Replit. So we have style.css in our files. Click the style.css, remove them, paste it, and then Ctrl S. Now this is your CSS, okay, style.css, but make sure when you go to index.html, make sure it has linked to style.css, otherwise it won't be reflecting when we refresh it. Let's have a quick look. Yes, it has not mentioned style.css. You can also search it, Command F, and then type in style.css, and you can see it has not linked it. So if you try to refresh this side, you'll see the same thing. Yeah, so it's very easy to link it, but I want ChatGPT to help us in this. Let's go back to ChatGPT and type in, please link our style.css to index.html. There we go. Tag you have to use to link your style.css to your index.html. You need to add a link tag within the head section of your HTML file. So why I am trying to use ChatGPT to get or to provide you the tags, because there may be a case in if you're doing it for the first time, you may face a lot of problem. So this is how you troubleshoot it. So as you have seen, when we refresh the Replit web view, it didn't change, because as you can see, the style.css is not linked with index.html. So that's why we use a tag. It's called link tag, and there's a new code for you, which if you can just copy it, and as you can see, it has linked your style.css here. Yeah, so you just need to copy it and then go back to index.html and paste it over here. You can see you have style.css, and which is linking to your this CSS file. Control S. Now let's refresh it, and there we go. You can see the layout has changed, and you can see it's also very responsive. If you see this web view, hang on, let me see. Yeah, there we go, new tab. So this is how your web page, your portfolio page looks like. It's also very responsive. So hang on, let's go back to Replit. You can see on the right hand side, if you're trying to minimize your view or the screen, you can see everything is very responsive. Okay, and then you can use various devices. Maybe you want to use a tablet, your phone, your PC, or anything. It will be responsive. Excellent. So we are done with step 3. Now your site already start looking much better. Let's go to our next step, that is step number 4. Okay, now for the fun part, you must have seen your portfolio website. Now let's add some interactivity. Okay, so JavaScript is like the action hero of your website. It make things happen, like when you click a button and something changes on the page. So let's add a simple back to top button that shows up when you scroll down the page. So when you're at the bottom of the page, there should be a scroll up or like back to top button. Yeah, we're just adding a very little bit of JavaScript code in it and see how it works. So now let's go back to ChatGPT and then let's type in our next prompt, that is generate JavaScript to add a back to top button that appears when the user scrolls down the page. There we go. Here's a JavaScript code snippet to add a back to top button that appears when the user scrolls down the page. The button will smoothly scroll the user back to the top when clicked, and there you go, your JavaScript. If you scroll down, you get the explanation which says like button creation. A button is an element is created and appended to the body of the document, and they've used the ID, which is called back to top button, for styling and targeting. And then you have the CSS styling, scroll event listeners, smooth scroll, and how to integrate. And so that's a good thing about this, it automatically adapts if you're a new user and what things will help. So add the JavaScript code within a script tag at the end of your index HTML file just before the closing body tag. So now let's first copy our JavaScript code. Okay, and then let's go back to Replit script.js. You paste your JavaScript here. Yeah, there we go. So this is our script, back to top button. Save it, and now go back to index.html because we want to call that script from our HTML. So as you can scroll down, you can see it has mentioned how to integrate it. So copy the code. It has mentioned like add the JavaScript code within a script tag at the end of your index.html, and this is the script. Let's go here, index.html, for the closing of the body tag here. You can press enter, maybe there. That's your script. Your JavaScript code goes here. Yeah, and now you have to call the script. So say for example, if you just run it, let's see, refresh your web view. Okay, you can't see the scroll back to top button, yeah, because we haven't called your script.js here. Yeah, now as you know, it says your JavaScript code goes here. So that's a comment. You can obviously add your JavaScript code. It's called script.js. So if you paste it within the tags, yeah, so script as the source, script.js, and then you close the tag. And now if you save and refresh it, let's see if you can get it. Okay, scroll down, and there we go, back to top. And once you click it, you go back to the top again. Press back to top again, back to top, back to top, back to top. Excellent. So we have done 4 steps so far, and our next step is putting it online with GitHub pages. So I hope you have followed these 4 steps. It's very easy, a lot of things to learn, lot of things to understand how index.html, script.js, and style.css work. And once you have done all of these using ChatGPT or various other LLM, you can use Gemini, you can use Meta AI, whatever you feel comfortable with. Our next step would be putting it online with GitHub pages. See you there. Alright, step 5, putting it online with GitHub pages. So you've built this awesome website, right? But what good is it if no one can see it, right? Let's put it online so you can share it with the world. We're gonna use GitHub pages for this, which is a super simple way to host your site for free. So here's what to do. Your first step is to create a GitHub account. If you don't have one yet, head over to GitHub and sign up. So GitHub, let's build from here. Click it. You can sign up or sign in. Since I already have a GitHub account, I just need to sign in. So this is our GitHub account. Now next step would be to create a new repository. There we go. Plus create new repo. Click it, and there you go. So name it something like my portfolio, and make sure it's public so people can actually visit your site. Okay, yeah, and then you can upload your files. Okay, so yeah, basic things. You can add your own description if you want to. It's just a demo, so we just quickly go which are the main parts, but you can make changes according to your needs. So create repo. There we go. That's your my portfolio repository. Yeah, now our next step is to upload a file. So now from Replit we have to download our project files, which are index.html, script.js, and style.css. And if you have any other files, you can also download it all together, and then go to GitHub repository and upload those files. It's very easy. If you click these 3 dots here, download as a zip, you can just download the files. Zip file, allow, and there we go. We have your my portfolio. Now we'll go back to our repo, and you can say you can see like get started by creating a new file or uploading an existing file. We'll click, make sure you are in codes. Yeah, code tab, upload an existing file, choose your file, click it, and then my portfolio. You have index.html, script.js, and style.css. Yeah, all 3. There we go, and commit changes. There you go. You have your index.html, script.js, and style.css uploaded in your GitHub repository. Now the next step is to enable the GitHub pages. So go to your repo settings. You can see the pages, this side, GitHub pages section. Click it. Now under the source, select the branch where your index.html file is, or usually your main or master. Yeah, and then GitHub will give you the URL where your site is live. So click it. You can see a deploy from a branch, and you can see your main or index.html should be there. You can see your main is fine, root is alright. So yeah, if you just see, like, again, pages, portfolio, default is main branch, as you have done it before. Go back to the code, click code, and that's your URL. Add a readme note. So my portfolio, visit my portfolio site here, and then commit changes. Okay, so now once you have made changes from the settings and the pages, as we did previously, yeah, so you have to wait for a couple of minutes, and you can see the deployment have been done. So I can see my GitHub pages here. Yeah, if you just click it, you can see it says GitHub pages just deployed 1 minute before, and this is my portfolio. Yeah, this is the URL of it. So I'll just copy the link. If you just click this side, this is your github.io. so you can see the URL, it says deb21.github.io, and this is what we made. Yeah, so GitHub has provided us the URL where our site is live. So if anybody wants to see, or you want to show your project to anyone, maybe you are showing it to your friends, maybe you're showing it to your company or XYZ, you can share your URL. So you can also have your read, like I accidentally added up the wrong URL here. You can edit it, but on your read me section or the page, you can just make sure you put the right URL. And commit the changes, update it, and there we go. You can again name it, do whatever you feel comfortable with. This is just a demo, so if somebody comes in your GitHub, click that link, they will be redirected to your portfolio page or whatever page you want to we'll be building off of in future. So your website is up and running on the internet. You can share the URL with your friends, family, or anyone who wants to check out your work. Well, let's have a quick wrap up. So there you have it. You have built and launched your first website, from setting up the HTML structure to styling it with CSS, adding interactivity with JavaScript, and finally putting it online for everyone to see. And you did it all with the help of some cool AI LLMs or tools, you can say, that made the whole process a breeze. So keep experimenting with what you have learned, tweak the design, and you can add more features, make this portfolio truly your own.